Sato ma Sadgamaya Tamaso ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityoma Amritam Gamaya Avir Madhi Rudrayate Dakshina Mukha Te Namam Pahinityam Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. Reach us through and through, and protect us evermore with your loving presence. Om. Peace, peace, peace. Seems like that's going to make it worse. That's okay, huh? No. All right. Good morning. So the title of today's talk is German Shepherd Yoga. Why not? So many yogas we have. Actually, I was thinking that I wanted to call this the religion I learned from my German Shepherd. Religious lessons from my German Shepherd, something like that. But that was too long for the bulletin. And so I thought German Shepherd yoga was okay. It's just one more kind of yoga in the market here, right? And so what is German Shepherd yoga? Well, we're going to try and figure that out today. It's the lessons that I learned, right? Yoga is the path of union, means union with God, right? So the lessons that I've learned from my dog, I've got two actually, that have hopefully helped me grow spiritually, right? That is the basic idea today. And so this is one of those situations I never thought I'd be in. I never thought I'd have a dog. It's one of those never thoughts. We all have never thoughts, and I have a bunch of them. I never thought I'd live in the Mojave Desert. Never thought I'd have two dogs out there. My mom would be a quadriplegic. Never thought I'd be a Swami. Never thought I'd be lecturing on Sunday in Hollywood. Never thought any of these things, right? And so we all have these never thoughts, you know, in spiritual life, in any life. You take up spiritual life and you have some idea that you're going to go somewhere and you wind up somewhere else. And you think, well, how did I get here? And so many of those that I listed you could talk about. But what's the answer? Why do these never thoughts happen to us, whatever our mode of life is? Well, of course, I don't know. Somebody asked Swami Yogeshananda. He was an old monk in Trabuco, passed away a couple of years ago. They asked him to describe spiritual life in one word. And he said, surprise. And I thought that's probably about as good an explanation as any for these never thoughts that seem to arise in our lives. So while I can't explain why all these things happen, I can at least trace chronological events, so that's where I'll start. So I'm in the desert, I'm gonna go for a walk, and I find going out the back gate that someone has cut into the gate. They're going to break into the house, and the place has had some problems with break-ins and vandalisms before I got there. And so I see this, and they had tools. They were clearly serious. I don't know why they stopped. Maybe they saw me or something and ran off, I don't know. But anyway, they meant business, and I saw the situation, and I thought, oh no, I've got to get a dog. Because there's really no other solution there. The cameras aren't going to work, it's too far away, there's no electrical, and it's too remote, it's too dark, forget it. So I think, okay, I have to consult. See, this is the way I approach spiritual life. You try and figure out which way the wind's blowing, right? You do your mantra, you do your yoga, you do what your guru told you to do, you offer your service at the temple or wherever, and then you wait for the next thing that God is going to bring into your life, right? This is how not everybody does it this way, but this is how I roll. I'm pretty much wait and see. Wait and see what God's going to do next. That may sound boring. It isn't. You would actually, at times, it's more interesting than you want it to be. But anyway, I decide that it's time to consult, right? So I go to Swami Sarvadevananda, it's a dog, blah, blah, blah. Board of trustees, dog, blah, blah, blah. And yes, dog. Not only that, German Shepherd. Many people say German Shepherd, and I was also thinking German Shepherd. Okay, German Shepherd. And so it's time to pick a dog. So I go, I've never done that before. I've had lots of dogs. I've had German Shepherds and other dogs. Now it's time to go pick a dog out of a litter, right? Usually they just come into my life somehow, or I go to a rescue or whatever. I mean, we've had dogs before in the monastery in Trabuco and my life before that. But this time I'm gonna go get a purebred out of a litter. I've never done that before, so I do what anybody would do. I go to the internet and find out how to do this, right? And I read all about it, and there's all these things that you should do and not do, picking a dog out of a litter. So then I go, I find a litter, and I watch the dogs playing together and all this. And then what do? I think I've spotted a yogi dog. See, I'm a monk, and I want a yogi dog. I want an aloof, calm, dignified, majestic yogi dog, right? And so I ignore all the advice that I read on the internet because I've got this gut feeling about this dog, right? And it turns out I'm totally wrong, and the internet is exactly right, and I've completely blown it. And so there is German Shepherd Yoga lesson number 1. What did I do? What did I do? I mistook gut feeling for inspiration. I thought, I see a yogi here. No, you don't, actually. You think you do, but you don't. And this is a common mistake in spiritual life, mistaking our instinct for inspiration. According to Vedanta, there are 3 kinds of knowledge. The lowest form is gut feeling or instinct. After that comes reason, right? That's what the internet had for me, reason. They've looked at a bunch of dogs, they've come to some conclusions, they're going to tell me what to do. Higher than reason is inspiration, right? And the problem is that a lot of the time we think that our instinct is inspiration. It's hard to distinguish these things. Swami Vivekananda explains this. He says, there is such a thing as instinct in us, which we have in common with the animals. There is, again, a higher form of guidance, which we call reason, when the intellect obtains facts and generalizes them. So that's what the internet did with the dogs, right? There's still a higher form of knowledge, which we call inspiration. This does not reason, but knows things by flashes. That is the highest form of knowledge. But how shall we know it from instinct? This is the great difficulty. Everyone comes to you nowadays and says he is inspired. In the first place, inspiration must not contradict reason. That's the first test, right? That's where I got off the boat, right? Because I just blew off all the information that I'd read and picked the wrong dog, right? He goes on, he says, what we call inspiration is the development of reason. No genuine inspiration ever contradicts reason. Where it does, it is not inspiration. Secondly, inspiration must be for the good of one and all. It must be perfectly unselfish. See, I wanted a particular kind of dog. I wanted the yogi dog, right? That's not perfectly unselfish. That's just what I want. And my inspiration is actually just kind of a hazy instinct or instinctual gut feeling about how to get what I want. All right, this is what a lot of people mistake instinct for inspiration. You have this kind of gut feeling about how you're going to get what you want, and you think you're inspired, right? And I thought I was actually pretty good at not doing this. But anyway, I wasn't. And Swami Vivekananda says basically very few of us can do this. He says, you must remember that there is not 1 in a million that is inspired in the present state of the world. I hope their number will increase. But in the present state of the world, they are few and far between. It is said that women have intuitive faculties while men drag themselves upward slowly by reason. Don't believe it. There are just as many inspired men as women. And so Anyway, I got the dog that I got, all right? I bring the dog home, and now the conversations begin. This is something in monastic life that I have found. It's a kind of a public life. You live in sort of a fishbowl. If you're sick in the monastery, and this is especially true in Hollywood and Trabuco. In the Mojave Desert, not so much, but still more than ordinary, at least my private life prior to joining this monastic order. You get sick in the monastery, a bunch of people know about it. Somebody breaks into the monastery, a bunch of people know about it, right? In the world, maybe just some coworkers know that you're sick, or maybe your house gets broken into. Maybe the neighbors don't even know, right? Just who you tell. But in the monastery, everybody knows when you're, excuse me, there's no water here. Everybody knows when you're sick. It's all right, I'm good, forget it. Everybody knows when you're sick, and you find that all the devotees are doctors. They've all got an opinion about how you should fight this thing, whatever it is. And the place gets broken into, and all the devotees are detectives, right? This is an experience you have in the monastery. And so I got a dog, and all the devotees weigh in on what I should do with this dog. And I found this very interesting. And I'm back to, again, remember, this is my mode of spiritual life, trying to read the writing on the universe's wall, right? So when all the devotees tell me to do something with the dog, I'm going to listen, because I figure, okay, this is God telling me what I should be doing with this dog. And so what do they tell me? Everyone, I mean, it was just remarkable to me. Almost every single person I talked to said, are you going to get obedience lessons? Maybe that doesn't sound weird, but I've had lots of dogs. No one's ever asked me that question before. I don't remember a single person ever asking me about a dog. I could make them sit up and shake hands and do whatever they do for treats, I never had obedience lessons before. But, okay, I thought, let's try it. We'll get some obedience lessons for the dog. So I go to the vet, local vet in the desert. I ask for a trainer. They send me to a guy who turns out to be superstar trainer. This guy he's trained dogs in the military. He's been training dogs for 60 years. His whole life is dogs. He's trained dogs for movies, for television. He's trained Sylvester Stallone's dog, Tina Turner's dog, all these celebrity A-listers' dogs. Knows everything about dogs, right? Okay. So I go to this guy. And I've got a 10-week-old German Shepherd puppy. Walk him in a circle. Okay, so I walk him in a circle. And I can't remember the exact words, but what he said was, wow, your dog's pretty self-absorbed. And I thought, gosh, how can you know that? I just walked him in a circle, and he's 10 weeks old. But that's what he said. Your dog's pretty self-absorbed. And I thought, okay, I don't understand how he could possibly know that, but maybe he, take that into consideration. He was spot on. The dog is a textbook narcissist. I couldn't believe it. I never had a dog like that before. I didn't know dogs came in that variety, I thought they were loyal, you were the center of their universe. That's what I thought with dogs, right? And I could actually spend the rest of the time here talking about his narcissism, but that would, that would obscure the forest for the trees. So I'll just briefly, from the comical, or from the annoying to the comical. On the annoying side, which is actually kind of funny, you give the dog a treat, a milk bone. What do? They wolf it down greedily. That's what dogs do, right? All my previous dogs have done this. Not this guy. What does he do? He spits it out on the ground and looks at me. You think I'm going to eat that? That's the look on his face. You think I want that? Just contempt, right? He's drinking his water dish, and it's empty. He empties it out, so I'm going to go fill it up for him. I do. I fill it up, and I put it back. And he looks at me like, what? I don't want that. And he'll go and sit by the water dish and not drink it. So, okay, I leave the room, and then I hear him lapping it up. right? So no gratitude is to be shown for anything that you do for this dog. No gratitude will be shown to you, right? So, that's the annoying side. The comical side, those of you who have been to the retreat in the Mojave Desert know that the shrine there it's beautiful. There's these big windows all on the north side of the house, and there's a panoramic vista view of the desert, and very serene spots for meditation. And the dog quickly figures out that he's got a captive audience in front of this window, in front of the shrine, right? There I am sitting and meditating, and this is time for him to perform, right? And he gets in front of the shrine window in the morning. I'm meditating. He sees me, and he gets in front of the shrine window and starts striking poses for me, right? He'll strike these, majestic poses, and then he'll look at me like, "You see that one?" and then he'll do some performance barking, woof woof, and with this striking pose, and he looks at me like, "Did you hear that?" And it's hilarious because his motives are so transparent. It's so transparent what he's doing, and this whole experience of having a narcissistic dog is very uncomfortable for me, I'm finding. I'm not comfortable having a narcissistic dog. Why? Well, because I'm God's dog, right? I'm finding there's a lot of me in this dog that I don't want to admit to, You can't even really see somebody else's negative qualities until you have some of them yourself, right? You're not really, Swami Vivekananda gives this great story about a thief and a baby. It says a thief comes into a room to steal something, into a house, and there's a baby in a crib, right? Well, does the baby see a thief in the house? No, he just sees a person in the house. He has no concept of thief. There's no thief. He doesn't see a thief because there's no thief in him. Right? He doesn't have thief, doesn't have that, right? So in order for me to recognize the narcissism of my dog, I realize that I'm seeing a lot of myself in this dog. And it's even more painful because, like I say, I'm God's dog, right? In other words, this is kind of a role reversal. You say, well, how does that work? This is bhakti yoga, basically. In bhakti yoga, we are supposed to establish a definite relationship with God. That is how we approach God through the path of bhakti yoga. And Sri Ramakrishna gives several different relationships we can practice. He says, a man should call on God, establishing a definite relationship, calling on God as master, mother, or friend. And there's others, child, and then, all these bhavas, these moods, we are encouraged to practice so that we can grow spiritually, right? This is bhakti yoga. Okay. Well, he didn't mention dog and owner, right? But that is actually established. It's a model of the master-servant relationship, to think of yourself, and it's been done in our order. Swami Vivekananda recommended to all his monks to have this loyalty of a dog, not my dog, but the ideal dog who is loyal to the master. That's the attitude of the master and servant that you want to cultivate as a devotee, right? So, I'm in this position where I'm forced to realize just what it's like to have a narcissistic servant. Just how that looks when your servant is more full of himself and not so interested in serving the master, right? And like I say, this is making me somewhat uncomfortable. And what is a narcissistic servant? What are the characteristics of a narcissistic servant? Well, he feels entitled. And if you are a spiritual aspirant, what do you feel entitled to? Well, you feel entitled to spiritual experiences. You feel entitled, where's my vision of God? Where is my spiritual bliss? Where's my ecstasy? I call on you so much, God, and you never show up, right? I give so many hours of service to the Vedanta Society, and I'm not being shown the proper respect there. I've studied so many hours of scriptures, and I'm not oozing wisdom, whatever it is, right? We have expectations in our spiritual life, right? God is not meeting my expectations. I'm entitled to something here, right? This is the entitlement of the servant. And I'm looking at this dog and realizing that I've got some issues here, right? And so, what happens? What happens is I get a lesson from this dog in yearning, right? Because I say, oh God, I call on you so many times and you don't show up. Well, the dog wants me. Do I show up every time the dog wants me? Every time the dog looks in the window, do I jump up from my meditation and go and give him a hug? No, I don't do that. And why not? Why do I feel okay ignoring the dog, right? God is allegedly ignoring me, right? And that's not okay. But me ignoring the dog is okay. Why? Because I know that the dog, in just a few seconds, is going to find something else to put in his mouth. He's going to find a squirrel to chase. He's going to find another dog to bark at. He's going to find something else to do. He is distracted. He is scattered, right? His yearning is momentary. It is shallow, superficial, and no, I don't jump up every single time the dog wants me, right? Sri Ramakrishna tells us what kind of yearning we're supposed to have. He says, one must have for God the yearning of a child. The child sees nothing but confusion when his mother is away. You may try to cajole him by putting a sweetmeat in his hand, but he will not be fooled. See, that's the key, right? The dog is fooled by every single sweetmeat. The world is full of sweetmeats, and he's running after every single one to put them all in his mouth, right? He says, one must feel such yearning for God. He to whom the enjoyment of worldly happiness appears tasteless, he who takes no delight in anything of the world becomes sincerely grief-stricken for the vision of the mother. And to him alone, the mother comes running, leaving all her other duties. And so I'm forced to acknowledge the legitimacy of God's apparent neglect in our relationship, right? And I've heard this, not just me, of course. I've heard so many people complain, I can't meditate, right? I can't concentrate. I've been doing this for so long. I haven't gotten anywhere. You know, that doesn't work. Complaining, if we could complain our way into realization, I would know a lot of Illumined people. Because a lot of people complain about not making any progress. And if we could just complain and complain and complain until we get there, this would be a lot easier, right? But we can't. Complaining doesn't work. And so when our entitlement is called into question, we are forced to realize at that point that it's time for another approach. Okay, if I'm not entitled to these things, maybe I should actually feel grateful for some of the stuff I already have. And what is that? Well, take a look at the world out there. Those of us who have been practicing spiritual life for a while, we've actually managed to dodge a lot of misery. Swami Brahmananda puts it this way. He says, give your body and mind to worldly enjoyments, and the world will destroy them both. Devote them to God and His service, and you will enjoy bodily health, peace of mind, and spiritual joy. And I think a lot of us have been in this practice long enough to see the truth of this teaching for ourselves. And if we haven't, then just going to the grocery store and looking at the tabloids would help, or even just looking at how many happy people are at the grocery store, right? I mean, one or two, maybe. If that doesn't convince us, if we just think about what worldly happiness is, what does worldly happiness depend on? It depends on an extremely unlikely series of successful outcomes, right? We need one successful outcome after another to be happy in our worldly experience. With each successful outcome, the next successful outcome is less likely to manifest, right? Because each successful outcome is what? It's borrowed against a background of inferior alternatives, right? If I am wealthy, it's because the 10 million ways that I could have lost that money haven't happened yet, right? If I have some position, it's because all the ways I could have lost that position haven't happened yet. Same thing with beauty and health. All the ways I could be ugly and sick haven't happened yet, right? They will, sooner or later. And if I have no spiritual basis to cushion my fall, then this is potentially a hole with no bottom. And you see people who go down that hole, right? So we have something to be grateful for, even if we're not where we think we should be spiritually. So the mind wants to veer off into entitlement and self-pity, and we have to smack it back onto the road, and the straight and narrow road. And then what happens? It starts feeling a little smug and superior, right? Oh, well, hey, look, all those idiots out there, look what they're doing, right? And then we have to, no, that's no good. You have to smack it back into the middle of the road again, right? We veer off. It's like the mind is like a drunkard, right? It's like drunk driving on the road, and you have to, and as the practice of yoga is to keep this thing on the straight and narrow path, the razor's edge, as it says in the Upanishads. This is one example. And so, what happens when we don't do that, right? When we just let ourselves drunk drive? Well, sooner or later we get smacked, right? If we don't give the mind a good smack to get it back in the center of the road, then what happens eventually is that the universe will do it for us, right? We get a karma slap. The karma slap puts us back in the center of the road, and these can be quite uncomfortable. And of course, my poor shepherd knows nothing about this. He hasn't read the Upanishads, razor's edge, policing the mind, none of this, right? Forget it, it's all gone. So he gets the karma slap. And what's that? For the shepherd, the karma slap comes in the form of an Akita. How'd that happen? The shepherd is kind of shy. And so I'm noticing that I leave him outside to do his patrol work, and he's hiding behind the air conditioner all day, right? And so, I mean, in his defense, it's 12 or 14 acres of property. That's a lot for a dog. But for him, it's hopeless. I mean, he's just hiding behind the air conditioner all day, right? So I'm starting to think this guy needs a wingman. He needs backup. And so then what happens, one night, I'm thinking along these lines, and one night a deranged gunman with a big shotgun shoots his way into the ashram. That's another whole story I'm not going to go into. But so this guy at 11 o'clock at night shoots his way into the ashram and call the cops and all this. The shepherd thinks the whole thing's wonderful. He thinks his whole experience is just thrilling. His life's been boring up until this night. But anyway, so this happens, and I think, okay, here's the universe's writing on the wall again. It's time for a second dog. This guy isn't going to cut it by himself. And at this point, I've had it with shepherds. This is my third or fourth shepherd, depending on how you count these things, and I'm done. And you have to be careful, because I know there's shepherd people out there that just, there's something. If you have a problem with shepherds, there's something wrong with you. That actually just happened in Santa Barbara. I was there a couple weeks ago, and some devotee said, "You need to look in the mirror if you're having a problem with that dog." And, okay. And I'm also done with Labradors, and Labrador people are not quite as devoted as shepherd people, but similar. If you don't like Labradors, you're kind of a questionable person, It's not that I don't like them, I'm just finished, I've had enough, right? So anyway, I'm looking for breeds, and I consult the wizened old trainer, and after some deliberation, decide on an Akita. And so the Akita is just a completely, utterly, totally different dog than the shepherd. Doesn't even seem like the same animal. And it turns out that the Akita, she's a puppy at this point, but it takes her a little while to figure out, a few months to figure out that she's bigger, stronger, and tougher than the shepherd is, right? And so she becomes the dominant dog. And This is the shepherd's karma slap, because now the shepherd is no longer the center of the universe, right? He can't think that he is the ultimate dog to end all dogs, because here's one that's bigger and stronger and pushing him around. And he can't pull his stunts anymore, right? Now when I give him a milk bone, he wolfs that thing down, because he knows that if he doesn't, the Akita is going to take it, right? And if I pour water for him now, he goes and laps it up immediately, because if the Akita gets there first, he's got to wait, because she's alpha. If he's there first, she can go to the dish, but if she's there first, he's got to wait till she's done, right? He has to show the proper respect to the Akita. So he's gotten this karma slap, and it's made him a slightly better dog. And I would say this is something that happens to us too. If we don't police ourselves, we also will eventually evoke a response from the universe that is probably not what we want. Swami Premananda has a parable about this. It's kind of a scary one. He says, a man once went to a garden with his several sons. The sons played about. Some plucked flowers, some plucked green coconuts, and one went to go fishing. When it was evening, the man called all his sons. All came, except the one who was fishing. The father called and called for him, but he would not come. He was deeply absorbed in catching fish. When it was quite dark, the father himself went, broke the fishing rod to pieces, and dragged the boy to the carriage. Thus does the Lord come from time to time, shatter our playthings, and drag us to him. Right? This is kind of a scary parable. Nevertheless, I think we've probably seen it, if not in our own lives, maybe in the lives of others. And I have to admit, probably most of us who have had this experience or seen this experience have to admit that however unpleasant it is, it can be ultimately for our good after we are able to see the situation objectively enough to admit that maybe we did need to have our fishing pole. And what's the fishing pole, right? Fishing pole can be anything. For the shepherd, it was entitlements. We can have our fishing pole, can be a relationship, it can be a job, it can be a house, a city, all kinds of things, position, right? Whatever it is we're holding on to, we won't let go of. Sometimes can be taken away from us quite violently. Doesn't have to be. Doesn't have to go that way, right? Sri Ramakrishna summarizes this very succinctly. He says, the cat handles the mouse one way, but its own kitten a very different way, right? Because what's the difference? The kitten wants to get back to the mother, cats, right? The mouse is trying to make off with a piece of cheese, right? So they get very different treatments. In other words, when we recognize that we are holding on to our fishing pole, whatever it is, we have to make some kind of effort to let it go. You know, once it's up to our consciousness, we have to try to let these things go. We have to try to overcome whatever toxic relationship we're in, whatever job environment we have, either by accepting it, changing it, leaving it, whatever we have to do. And I've seen, and probably a lot of us have seen, that the fishing pole can also be taken away from us oh so gently. And we can be led oh so gently to the carriage. This can also happen. But if we hold on to whatever it is stubbornly, yes, eventually, it can get violently taken away from us. Anyway, so that's what happens to the poor shepherd. And we might wonder, why does the Akita, why does she work over the shepherd so badly? Why is she so dominant? Because she is. I didn't even realize really just how little self-confidence the shepherd had until the Akita came in the house. And that's the key, is self-confidence. The Akita has it. She is comfortable with herself. The shepherd is not. For all his self-centered narcissism, he doesn't believe in himself. He doesn't have any confidence in himself. The Akita does. Now, don't get me wrong, the Akita is by no means a perfect dog. She is lazy and stupid, by far the stupidest dog I've ever had in my life. She also has probably something like an eating disorder and a kind of martyr complex. So she's got her issues, but she's not a narcissist. She's not. And that's refreshing. It really is. And it's funny because with all her self-confidence, she's actually kind of aware of her own shortcomings and will sometimes engage in this sort of sheepish behavior because she knows she's, got some problems, right? Where the shepherd is just prancing around all the time in denial, right? And yet he has no self-confidence, right? And so what about us, for spiritual aspirants? How important is this self-confidence? I had a Swami, a senior Swami, came out to the desert and visited about a year or so ago. And we were talking about, over breakfast, we were talking about Swami Vivekananda. And somehow he said this line. He said, Swami Vivekananda's Vedanta is basically self-confidence. That was his assessment, his distillation of Swami Vivekananda's Vedanta in 2 words, self-confidence. I thought, wow, that's pretty drastic. It's 9 volumes, self-confidence, that's it, right? But I thought, it's not a bad summary. If you really want to put it into a soundbite. And I kind of wondered at the time, well, how does one distinguish between self-confidence and vanity, right? And I'm kind of getting a lesson with this with the dogs here. But I asked the Swami this question, well, what about, it seems like it's a gray area. It seems like you could slip from self-confidence to vanity and not really know it. So I asked the Swami this question. And his answer I thought was pretty good. He said, self-confidence means that I can do it, whatever it is, and so can anyone else. Vanity means I can do it, whatever it is, but nobody else can do it. I'm the only one who can do it because I'm special, right? That's what he said the difference was between self-confidence and vanity. And he didn't explain it this way, but it makes sense because in the self-confidence model, we would say, I'm acknowledging the divine within myself. That's why I can do this. I'm also acknowledging the divine, the greatness in all those around me. They also have this. They also can do this, right? Now, when I say I'm the only one that can do it, that means I'm relying on the apparent self, right? Just this particular version. That's the only one that can do it, right? That's the illusion. The greater self is the one you want to rely on. That's self-confidence, right? So, now whether or not we think that Swami Vivekananda's Vedanta can be boiled down so drastically, it is a fact that he was very aware of the greatness of those around him. People who went to see him were so in awe of this guy who just seemed like he dropped in from some other dimension and glowed in the dark and just was this incredible thing that like nothing they'd ever seen before. And they were just, overwhelmed by his presence. And then they would think that when they would go to him, they would cower, right? They would feel small, but they didn't. They actually felt bigger. They felt empowered. That's what they said. Why? Because his awareness of the greatness in them called it up in their own minds, right? It made them aware of their own greatness, right? That was his awareness of the universal self was so strong, it was contagious. He was aware of the greatness of others so much that they actually felt uplifted by him instead of cowering before him like they expected. And I think we've seen people in our lives who don't have this and who are full of themselves. And what does it do? Just like being aware of the greatness of others, it opens your eyes. Being full of yourself blinds you. You are blinded to the greatness of others. In fact, you're blinded to everything in others if you're so full of yourself. And this is what happens with the dogs. The shepherd is so full of himself that he has no clue what is going on with the Akita. This is, quite frequently this happens, right? I'm in the shrine meditating, and it's time for the dog show. So the Akita's sitting there in front of the window, and the shepherd comes up wagging his tail. And the Akita is clearly furious with the shepherd. I don't know what he's done, but he's done something to irritate her, and it's not hard to guess, because I've seen this again and again. Typically it's a bone, right? I give them both a bone. And like I said, she's as dumb as a stump. So what does she do? When he gets the bone, he starts chewing it because he's afraid of her. She gets the bone, what does she do? She buries it. But she's too dumb to go far away. She buries it like 10 feet, in line of sight of the shepherd. He watches her do it. The idea that he'll come and dig it up later, she can't figure that out. Right? If I bury it right in front of him, he will come and steal this bone from me later. She just knows that somehow you can't connect the dots there, right? So then what happens is she goes and the bone's not there and the shepherd's got it and there's a big brouhaha, right? I don't know if that's what's happened, but it's probably something like that because he's smarter than her and he runs rings around her and he taunts her and does all this stuff, right? At the same time, he's utterly clueless. He walks up to her wagging his tail, I want to play. That's it. Whatever you're going through, I don't know, I don't care. It's all about me wanting to play now, right? That's it. And I think, you're going to get it here, I mean, I can see it coming. You can't because you're so full of yourself and your own desires and what you want to do. You're completely blind to this other dog person that is about to, lunge at your throat because she's so enraged with you, right? And she does, right? That's what she lunges at. And then I guess she's angry, and he goes off, right? And so that is the price we pay for our vanity, our narcissism, is blindness, right? While self-confidence opens us up to see others more clearly. And so, of course, my poor shepherd doesn't understand any of this. And I kind of wondered, did I get the wrong dog, right? And I don't think so. I didn't get the dog that I wanted, obviously, but remember, this is one of those never thoughts. I never thought I'd get a dog, right? So then what happens? You get in this situation that I got into, you try and figure out the right way to go, you try and read the writing on the universe's wall, like I try to do, and then you make a decision. You pray. I prayed. I thought, okay, I'm going to ignore the internet's advice, and I'm going to get this dog because I think he's a yogi dog, right? So I left the breeder's place, and I went and prayed for a while to make sure that this was the right decision, right? That's what I did. And we do that. Is this the right person to marry? Is this the right house to move into? Is this the right career to choose, job to take, whatever, right? All these, we have these never thoughts, and we trace it back to some life decision, right? I never thought I'd be in this situation. It must be because I married the wrong person, or whatever it is, right? Did we really? If we tried to use our best judgment, okay, we don't have this inspiration that Swami Vivekananda is talking about. We're stuck with our instinct, our gut feeling. But when we take that effort to pray, when we try to discern the divine will, and then later on things don't turn out the way we wanted them to, we're not happy with the situation, and we think, well, geez, it felt right. I prayed for it. Did God not hear my prayer? Was he not listening that day? Did I not pray loud enough? Whatever it is we think, right? Not necessarily, right? Just because it's not pleasant doesn't mean it's not good. That's another just ancient teaching that we have such a hard time digesting, right? It goes back to the Upanishads. There's two different paths. There's the good and there's the pleasant. They are almost never the same. That's the problem. And we keep wanting them to be the same. And we keep, you think, I want this dog, right? This is going to be a pleasant dog, a yogi dog. I'll be happy with this dog. I'll pray to God, and he'll give me this dog that'll make me happy. We make this mistake again and again, right? God it doesn't mean he didn't listen to your prayer. Just because he didn't give you the dog, job, wife, house, city, whatever that makes you happy, right? Because I have to admit that I've learned a lot from this dog, right? But we don't want that. We don't want religion to give us learning. We want religion to give us pleasure, which it almost never does, right? Swami Vivekananda says it very succinctly. He says, if you want to give religion to a thief, you have to tell him that stealing is holy. Right? You understand? The thief doesn't want to change. He doesn't want to change. He doesn't want to stop stealing. What he wants to do is stop hearing his conscience tell him that it's wrong to steal. That's what he wants. And so he wants to find a religion that will say, you're fine, you're okay, just everything, stealing is holy, don't worry about it, right? Okay, that's an extreme example, but we're all looking for that. Justify, spiritualize my preferences, right? That's what we're hoping for. So I didn't get the dog that I wanted. It doesn't necessarily mean I got the wrong dog. And I think that basic method, when we don't know which way to go, and we pray for guidance, and we use our best judgments, what else can we really do? We surrender the results to God, right? And then whatever situation manifests, whatever this never thought is that comes up in our life later, we have to think, sometimes you have to leave it, whatever the situation is. Sometimes you have to change it. A lot of the times you have to accept it. Those are really your only options. Leave it, change it, or accept it. And a lot of the times you really have to accept it. You leave it, and you find the situation 6 months or a year later has come back to you, right? You try and change it, and you find you can't really. It just keeps showing up again and again, the same thing. And so we find that we have to accept it. And why do we have to accept it? What good does it do us to accept a situation that is not pleasant, that we think is for our good, that we think God has put into our lives for our spiritual growth? What good does that do us? It allows us to develop resignation. Resignation to God. And from resignation, what comes? From resignation, we get yearning. Right? Slowly, when we resign ourselves to God, we abandon ourselves to this outcome that is not pleasant, not what we wanted, right? We find that resignation slowly grows into this yearning that Sri Ramakrishna says is the key to spiritual growth. He says the yearning is the whole thing. Yearning is different than complaining, right? I said that before. Complaining is not yearning. Yearning is something else, right? So I don't think I got the wrong dog. And I was talking to another Swami on the phone. Gosh, that was a long time ago now, I guess months. Anyway, he asked me if I love the dog. It's pretty obvious that I don't. Sorry. I don't love either of the dogs. I do feel sorry for the dogs. Why do I feel sorry for the dogs? I feel sorry for all the dogs I've had, really, and all the animals to some extent. Dogs are very human, and it's very easy to spot dogs in ways that, goldfish, you can't so much. But anyway, why do I feel sorry for the shepherd? Because he's a sneaky, narcissistic thief? No, that's not why I feel sorry for the shepherd. Why do I feel sorry for the Akita? Because she's a lazy, stupid, gluttonous martyr? No. That's not why I feel sorry for the Akita. Those are just their issues. We've all got those issues. We all have something. It's baggage, right? We've all got our baggage. The animals do too. Baggage is not how we're supposed to judge each other. It's not how we're supposed to judge ourselves, right? Swami Vivekananda says, no man should be judged by his defects. The great virtues a man has are his especially. His errors are the common weaknesses of humanity. His errors are the common weaknesses of humanity. And I would say dogdom too. His errors are the common weaknesses of humanity and should never be counted in estimating his character. there is a sort of default condition here of ignorance where we manifest all these traits that I just listed, a bunch that the dogs have, right? And whatever else we have, right? We have to earn our way past those. We work for these virtues, and they are our own, right? This silliness of all this baggage that we have is our inheritance. Everybody's got it. It's boring. That's not how we judge each other, right? How we judge each other is how we fight past these things, right? That is our real worth. Never judge anyone by his defects. I mean, you think about that, that's just completely contrary to what the world does, right? We just, he does this and she does that, right? That's what we do. But Swami Vivekananda says, no, that's not us. What's us is what we've worked beyond, what we've earned for ourselves, right? And this is why I feel sorry for the dogs, because they're not doing that, right? They can't do that. People try and do that. We have all kinds of ways. We go to psychotherapy. There's no doggy psychotherapy, right? I mean, there's people that will charge other people money for doggy psychotherapy, but the dog can't pick anybody. He can't go to, this other dog down the street seems a lot wiser than me, and I can tell him my problems, and, they don't have that, right? Or a doggy guru is going to give them some bark mantra or whatever, right? They can't do any of these things. And so they're not trying to overcome this stuff. Right? We can try, and we try all kinds of ways. Some of them are better than others. We can try by psychotherapy, by pills. We can go to the bar and drink ourselves stupid, right? People try all kinds of ways to overcome their issues. Vedanta says the most direct method is yoga. And that's that example I gave earlier, right? Where you have the mind, the drunk driver mind that's veering off course, right? And we have to give it one slap or another slap to get it back on the center of the road, right? We have to try and make the mind walk the razor's edge. That's what we have to do. And the dogs can't do that. They just respond in unconscious instinct mode to the next karma slap. That's it. The karma slaps come one after another and get them somewhere else, right? But they don't police themselves. And there are people that live this way too, that don't try and correct themselves. They try and correct everything external to them. They try and fix the outside world. They don't try and fix anything. They just, I'm fine. It's all fine, right? They don't pay attention to the state of their minds, and eventually the universe smacks them one way or the other. Vedanta says this actually will eventually work. Eventually, if you get enough karma slaps, you'll wake up. But that's very painful and very long. It's a long, difficult, painful journey to go through life unconsciously. And so, as Swami Brahmananda says, devote yourself to God, and you will enjoy bodily health, peace of mind, and spiritual joy. May the good Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May he lift his countenance upon you and give you peace. May good betide all. May happiness come to all. May all see the face of truth and be fortified with the armor of love, goodwill, joy, and understanding. Peace, peace, peace. So, thank you all for coming today. Let's see what's on the agenda here. Looks like next Sunday, Swami Sarvadevananda is going to speak, 3 Paths of Refuge. There's Tuesday classes at 4:30 p.m. on the Bhagavatam. 7:30 p.m. Tuesdays, various classes here, Shanti Gita, Swami Vivekananda's Mahamantras, and the Celestial Discrimination, various times of the month, and gospel classes on Wednesday night. And so you're all welcome to that, and your friends are also welcome. Thank you all for coming. And I'll be at the front, and we can say hi to each other. Okay.
I just want to say thank you, Swami Arupeshananda, for your very thought-provoking and at the same time very entertaining talk. I think everybody enjoyed it, and I'm sure you're going to face some flack in the greenhouse from the dog lovers. I also wanted to mention that we had a very nice Karma Yoga day here yesterday. We had a good turnout, and the other chandeliers were polished up, and we put the garden, we removed a lot of weeds, and we organized the storeroom and all kinds of things. So once a month we have it, and I think those who attended really enjoyed it. So have a good time. If this is your first time here, you're most welcome. We have a bookshop. Have a look. There's some coffee and tea available. And see you next week or before.